people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Would you further back up that point? Did you feel like Matchroom could have done more for you?
No, I think they got me the belts, become undisputed, had a headline that O2, had a great fight with Mary McGee. But let's be real, they didn't promote me well. Like, I beat Katie Taylor and they didn't want to know it. They was gutted. And he was, and people don't want to hear that because people want me to keep my mouth shut and say nothing. But I absolutely broke his heart the night that I ruined the homecoming for Katie Taylor. I broke his heart, so yeah.
It seems ungrateful to say that Matchroom did a poor job promoting your fights when they put you in a position to get fights that you weren't otherwise getting, win titles that you weren't otherwise winning, boxing on a platform bigger that is seen by a bigger audience than the audience you had before they came into it. It's ungrateful. Because it takes money to do all that. To pay for your fights and pay for the kind of opponents you're looking for takes money to do that. It takes an investment that no other major promotional outfit at the time was making, so that you can turn around and say they did a poor job promoting you. The only reason Queensberry decided to pick you up is because of how Matchroom has been promoting you. The only reason people know who you are right now is because of Matchroom. When she left Cyclone Promotions, did Queensberry pick her up then? And what about when she was fighting on very small shows under the MTK banner? Why didn't Queensberry step into it then? Why now? After Matchroom promotes you, puts you in unification matches, gets you the biggest fight in a sport of women's boxing, not one, but two Katie Taylor fights. What, you're mad because she's the A side and you're the B side? There is this attitude amongst fighters. We've seen it before, like what we saw with Lawrence Okoli and Joshua Buatsi, two fighters who have yet to parlay their migration from Matchroom to somewhere else into any semblance of success. I mean, look at Lawrence. They're shipping him out to Poland. Think about it for a second. He fights hard to leave Matchroom to go to Boxer just to end up being the away fighter in a Chris Billum-Smith fight. It was in Chris's neck of the woods, not Lawrence's. He loses, and he activates his rematch clause, but the rematch never happens. The rematch clause, as it were, it wasn't even honored. This is what you left Matchroom for. Now what are they doing? They're shipping Lawrence Okoli out to Poland to fight Lukas Rozansky in Lukas Rozansky's neck of the woods. Sky and Boxer, they didn't even pay to bring Lukas over to him. No, they're shipping out Lawrence to them. This is what you left Matchroom for. Joshua Buatsi talked about how he felt his fights weren't seen, fighting on an app, fighting on DAZN. But how many people are seeing and how many people are talking about Joshua Buatsi's fights now? They offered you a title shot. They offered you a 7-figure purse and a Dmitry Bivol fight. And your response is to leave Matchroom, leave DAZN, go to Boxer. What was the end game? What was the goal? Putting distance between yourself and that fight with that fighter? Because you have yet to parlay that migration into any semblance of success. Now, here with Chantelle Cameron, it's the same thing. We'll see what job Queensberry Promotions does with this fighter, because what this fighter is saying is that their old promoter wasn't doing a good job. Well, let's see what job this one does. And if it turns out the same way, it's not the promoter. Yeah, Chantelle is a skilled boxer. I could never take that away from her. But I can't help but hear these comments and think to myself, Queensberry wouldn't have wanted to sign you if not for the job that Matchroom did. And that's reality. Because they didn't sign you, and they had plenty of opportunity when you left Cyclone, when you were at MTK. Why didn't they sign you then? Why now? You think Queensberry Promotions can do a better job than the job Matchroom was doing? We'll see. I half expected Chantelle to go over to Boxer because Natasha Jonas is over there and Lauren Price is over there. She went to Queensbury. Likely because she doesn't want to take a back seat to anyone. She doesn't want to be in anyone's shadow. But was that really the right place to go for a welterweight? We'll see. I don't imagine that any one fighter wants to have to take a back seat to another, be in another fighter's shadow, but not all fighters are created equal. It seems to me that a lot of the hard feelings that Chantelle Cameron has towards Eddie Hearn and Matchroom and their methodology of promotion have everything to do with Katie Taylor. Has everything to do with Katie. But that's tantamount to saying that Virgil Ortiz should resent Golden Boy Promotions because he's not as well known as Ryan Garcia. Because one guy is noticeably more popular than the other, even though his popularity is not necessarily because of who promotes him. Or how. Same applies to Katie. I heard about Katie Taylor before I ever saw her fight, because she was a very popular amateur fighter, amateur standout, and that translated into her professional boxing career. Is that what Chantelle is mad about? That Katie's more popular? What, that you had to fight her in her neck of the woods? You won one of those fights, though. You're mad that it was in Ireland? To get you the kind of money that you wanted for the fight, where else was it supposed to be? Hard feelings. Sometimes they're warranted, sometimes they're not. I still like Chantelle Cameron as a fighter, but I do think she's off base with what she's saying about Matchroom and their ability to promote, because I reiterate, if not for their promotion, the job they did, Queensbury would have never picked you up. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, ahead of this weekend's action and Mondays, we look over at the current rank standings on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list as it pertains to Canelo Alvarez's upcoming title defense tonight of his undisputed super middleweight crown. What happens if Canelo Alvarez wins? Does he gain ground? He's currently ranked at number 3. Behind Terence Crawford and behind Naoya Inoue. What it is that even though Canelo Alvarez has been a champion at 4 weights and beaten more champions than, say, Terence Crawford, and he knew it, when he lost to Dimitri Bivol, he was momentarily removed from the list per the rules that govern it, that no fighter coming right off a loss is allowed to maintain a rank. The list is only for winners and only for champions. Thus, Canelo had to return to the winner's bracket before he could return to the list, and he did with Gennady Golovkin, though having lost some ground as a result of the loss to Bivol. So if he wins this weekend and racks up another successful title defense, will that be enough to move him ahead of, say, Terence Crawford? And it might be, because Canelo is comparatively more active than Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford's last fight was way back there in July of last year's. Canelo's was more recent in September, and he's fighting again tonight. That's saying that Canelo Alvarez will have fought 2 times since Crawford's fight with Spence. That in many ways he's already more accomplished than Terence Crawford, but he's also more active. So that might be enough to surpass him, though points for style matter too. He has to look the part. If he goes in there, looks his age, looks old, but ekes out a victory, well then that won't be enough to move him past Terence, because Terence wins all of his fights decisively. There's no question at the end of a Terence Crawford fight who really won. It's not enough to just win. If Canelo wins and does it in very good fashion, if he knocks out Jaime Munguia, then yes, that might be enough to move him past Terence. If he loses, he's off the list, per the rules that govern it. No fighter absent of a world title and coming right off a loss is allowed to maintain a rank. The list is only for winners and only for champions. In that situation, Munguia becomes champion and Canelo's the loser. So he would be out and Jaime Munguia would be in. Where would he rank? Somewhere at number 5, maybe number 6. It all depends on what happens, but Jaime Munguia would emerge in the top 5 or top 6. Remember that he's been a champion at 2 weights. He beat Saddam Ali down there at 154 for the WBO title. This would be the 2nd world champion he's taken a belt or belts from. Champion at 2 weights, having beaten 2 world champions and in effect becoming an undisputed champion himself. That might be enough to get him a number 5 or number 6 spot if he wins. You will notice the blacked out portion in the bottom left corner. That is where Devin Haney was in the number 7 spot. But per the rules that govern the list, he was ejected after he lost that decision to Ryan Garcia. And I understand everything that is going on, that it has since come out that Ryan tested positive for 2 steroids and that Devin's loss to him may be overturned. It may be ruled a no contest, but that hasn't happened yet.
More importantly,
Devin has to get back out there and show that he's still got it. Some fighters lose a fight, they can bounce right back. Other fighters, they're never the same after that. Devin Haney has to prove that he wasn't irreparably damaged from that fight, physically or psychologically. And until he does that,
he's off.
I mean, that's why that rule is in place. Because I've seen it happen to where a fighter loses a fight, even if it's a competitive fight, and when they come back, they're not the same guy. Look at Keith Thurman. He lost that fight to Manny Pacquiao way back there in 2019, and
his career hasn't been the same since.
This is a guy that only lost one fight, just one fight. And here today, he is all but done in the upper echelon.
He is not a high-level boxer anymore.
It's for situations like that one that rule is in place. Winning is what got you here, and winning is what'll get you back. But until you do, you're off the list.
We'll see what Devin Haney does.
As it pertains to Naoya Inoue's fight on Monday with Luis Nery, Naoya Inoue, who's ranked at number 1, if he wins, he fortifies that position with another successful title defense.
What if he loses?
If he loses, he's ejected from the number 1 spot. Terence Crawford may move into it, or Canelo Alvarez, depending on how he does. And Luis Nery would emerge somewhere down there at number 5 or number 6.
Because Luis Nery has been a champion at 2 weights. He was a champion down there at 118, and if he were to win on Monday, he'd become a 2-division and undisputed champion in the process.
I don't think it's going to come to that because I have Inoue winning the fight, but that's just some things to think about ahead of this weekend's action. Men's light heavyweight news. I'm sure you've heard the disappointing intel by now. Artur Beterbiev suffered a ruptured meniscus, and his undisputed light heavyweight championship fight versus Dimitri Bivol on June 1st in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, has been postponed. It was announced by Turki Al-Sheikh, who told ESPN a replacement opponent is being sought for Bivol for June 1st, though let's be honest, there is no adequate replacement for Artur Beterbiev in this situation. This is a long-awaited, long-anticipated fight that has taken many, many years to make, and really, it's the best fight to make at light heavyweight. The only fight. No substitute will suffice, but that's the situation that we're in. Sources tell ESPN Beterbiev will undergo knee surgery and will be sidelined until at least September. The hope is for Beterbiev versus Bivol to be rescheduled later this year.
This guy's always getting injured. It's always something.
Always. These periodic injuries that Artur Beterbiev always seems to suffer, always a problem, almost cyclical, have given rise to the notion that perhaps what it really is Artur is cycling on and off of banned substances. Yes, this is a sentiment that has been expressed.
Remember that ahead of the Callum Smith fight, the last fight that he had elevated levels of a naturally occurring substance within the body, which is not common for a man Artur's age.
He didn't test positive for a banned substance or an anabolic steroid, but he did have elevated levels of testosterone, I think it was, or was it HGH? Something or other, a naturally occurring hormone in the body, which is not common amongst men in their late 30s, though not impossible.
Just playing devil's advocate.
And I remember then people saying that they believed the reason that Artur Beterbiev is so often injured is because he needs more time to cycle on and cycle off of whatever he's using. Yes, that sentiment was expressed before. It's being expressed in some circles, small ones, now.
Just playing devil's advocate.
It could just as easily be that between Artur's extensive amateur career and what is his pro career, he's amassed enough wear and tear over time that he's an injury-prone fighter because he has been injury-prone for years.
It could be that way.
Though at a time in the sport when anti-doping is all the rage and at the center of the boxing conversation here and now, when you really can't put anything past anyone, you never really know until you know. In any event, if we are to take this story at face value, Artur is going to be coming off an injury when he faces Dimitri.
And surgery.
So this was already one of the more difficult fights to edge in the sport today. A genuine 50-50 fight for all the right reasons. Both fighters at the peak of their powers and the height of their respective popularity, their profiles and the profile of the fight. It was perfect. Almost too perfect.
I was struggling to edge it.
I'd wager that some of you were too as to who will emerge the victor if and when these two fighters fight. I was struggling, but if you needed some assistance, this latest news might provide some in making your decision.
Picking a winner?
So one of the more intriguing elements of this fight, at least for me, was Dmitry Bivol's movement, and wondering whether or not Artur Beterbiev in his old age would be able to keep up with and keep on him the way he's been able to with everybody else, it being that this guy moves a lot better than, say, Joe Smith Jr., Anthony Yard, Callum Smith, just anyone that Artur has fought so far. It's not the same thing as closing in on a Marcus Brown, for example. Marcus Brown, who spent large sections of the fight with Artur just retreating, outright moving away from him. No, Dmitry Bivol is a lot more streamlined.
In and out, on his toes, throwing punches on the way in, then getting out, doing it safely.
That he's fast enough on his feet with fast enough hands to string together a 2 and 3 punch combination, then exit the pocket and do it safely, which may prove a difficult assignment for Artur Beterbiev, given that he is some years older. Now that he's coming off a knee injury and subsequent knee surgery that will follow, that does change the complexion. At least for me, because that's pivotal. Being able to keep up with and keep on Dmitry Bivol. How are you going to do that when you're coming off a knee injury and knee surgery? For me, that changes things and makes me lean a little more towards Dmitry Bivol to win this match, and tack on that even if Dmitry's not fighting Artur in June, he may fight someone else.
They're in the process of finding a replacement for Artur, and granted that no replacement will suffice for the fight that we had, the fight that we wanted and still want.
The silver lining is it allows Dmitry to keep tools sharp. Get out there, get some rounds in, keep the machine well oiled, while what Artur is going to be doing, Artur is going to be recovering.
If his first fight back is the Dmitry Bivol fight, well, that's not good for Artur.
Artur really is one of the strongest punchers in the entire sport of boxing here today. One of the strongest finishers with 100% knockout percentage.
Right.
But Artur has to pile on the damage. That's what he does. He overwhelms a guy with volume and power. That power may be that much harder to deliver on a Dmitry Bivol because he moves so well and he moves so much. Artur will be standing on a bad knee that's been operated on.
It's not good.
Already figured that Dmitry Bivol's movement, his legs, which are a lot fresher and younger than Artur's, that's his best bet, his best weapon to try to win this fight and win it on his feet.
Was already a factor.
More so now. The originally scheduled Matchroom versus Queensbury 5-for-5 tournament will still be going down in June without interruption. Dmitry, he may end up fighting in a stay busy fight against somebody else.
So it's not a complete loss.
Though it is a downer, it is a buzzkill, because that's one of the fights that was on the calendar that I was looking forward to the most.
Yeah, but if you're an Artur Beterbiev fan, or if you've just been watching him, you'll be used to this by now.
This fucking shit always happens with him, man.
Always.